CBS 7's Matt Rist was first to speak to the district attorney today, who says the bodies will now be dug up for more evidence. Matt?
Jay Tatum, District Attorney Bobby Bland today is criticizing the medical examiner's office yet again for not performing an autopsy. And it seems having that doctor sign off on death certificates without actually seeing a body is a big problem. And the solution will now include hiring a new medical examiner. It began with the exhumation of the bodies of two Odessa grandparents for autopsies never performed. And it all came down to a tie-breaking vote today by the county judge. So the ME's office will stay.
As long as they're put back the way they were put in, I guess it'll be okay. So that way we can just go forth with all this and leave this behind and let them rest.
New information takes fault away from an Odessa couple in the wreck that took their lives. But the good news is shortly. An Odessa family must do the unthinkable to find the truth in the death of their parents.
A crash last December at Loop 338 and 8th Street in Odessa left husband and wife Ruben Gandara and Paula Sanchez dead at 62 and 71 years of age. DPS investigators originally said the couple ran a red light and were hit by another driver.
But troopers now believe the other driver was likely driving while intoxicated. And today we learned the couple may not have run a red light after all.
CBS 7's Matt Rist was first to speak to the district attorney today, who says the bodies will now be dug up for more evidence. Matt?
Jay Tatum, District Attorney Bobby Bland today is criticizing the medical examiner's office yet again for not performing an autopsy. And now that a grand jury has charged 52-year-old Carol Carpenter with felony murder, Bland says they can't prove it without those autopsies.
Still feel like my parents ain't resting for the simple fact that the case still was open and there was just a bunch of ifs, ands, and buts.
After learning the couple may not have run a red light after all, there are lingering questions about who was at fault. It led District Attorney Bobby Bland to take a closer look and a grand jury to bring felony murder charges against the driver that hit the couple's vehicle, who was drunk driving, saying he was careless and it limited his ability to avoid the crash.
It was his third driving while intoxicated, therefore it's a felony. Whenever someone kills somebody in the course of a felony, they're properly charged with felony murder.
A blood alcohol sample was taken from Carpenter, but the medical examiner's office did not order an autopsy on the aging couple.
Do you think you could prosecute this guy to the full extent of the law without an autopsy?
No, there's no way to prove it. There's an automatic reasonable doubt built in without an autopsy. You have to be able to explain what happened to their bodies at the time. Nobody ever medically examined this body.
Bland says this is not the first time the ME's office declined an autopsy.
The people that support the way the medical examiner's office and the one that say they're doing a good job and they've always done a good job should be forced to go and talk to the victim's children in this case.
At least we'll know that they'll be cleared and they'll be able to rest and can leave them alone already.
Now, we did reach out to the medical examiner's office, but we have not yet heard back. No word yet on when those two bodies will be dug up and autopsies performed. Live in studio, Matt Rist, CBS 7 News.
Now, I understand the examiner says the exhumation may not be worth it, right, Matt?
Lauren, exactly. Dr. Ann Ackerman says the autopsy may not find anything new, but it's the second time in weeks that a no autopsy call by the ME's office is under scrutiny. Tonight, the ME's office maintains that the couple was at fault in the crash, but admits their protocols may need some work.
At that point, it was determined that this elderly couple had been responsible for the accident.
So why not just err on the side of caution? There is a drunk driver involved in the crash and ask for autopsies.
That's a perfectly clear question to answer right now. Then it wasn't so clear.
The family of Ruben Gandara and Paula Sanchez prepares to say goodbye a second time. DPS said yesterday medical examiner investigators knew on scene of the other driver, Carol Carpenter's prior history of DWIs, and that he might have been drunk that night.
That he did have a history of 2 DWIs, but you're saying you were not aware of that?
I was not aware of that.
Being told by DPS troopers on scene that the driver might have been driving drunk, wouldn't that automatically involve criminal litigation and warrant an autopsy?
And again, it gets back to the eyewitness testimony on the scene about who was felt to be at fault for the accident.
Last night, CBS 7 uncovered ME policy which states autopsies must be ordered in motor vehicle accidents where criminal litigation is anticipated.
It says any criminal litigation, and criminal litigation includes DWI. So they violated their own policy right there.
So you don't think this was a violation of that policy?
And I have not had a chance, since I saw your deal last night, I've spent a little bit of time today re-looking at that and haven't had a chance to fully study that.
I have a copy of the policy I'd like you to look at.
This is a little bit dilutive interpretation, and that's why I think some of this stuff needs some work.
So do you think a call to Mr. Bland before this decision was made might have helped clear that up and might have changed the decision?
Sure, absolutely. And I have to look seriously at some personnel issues, and were those protocols clear, and were they followed? And if they're not, then, you know, if personnel changes need to be made, personnel changes need to be made.
The distress of the exhumation in Ackerman's eyes may not be worth it.
If this proves that they died from blunt force trauma, which is how the death certificate was signed out by me, then it won't help his case.
Is this the last time something like this could happen?
Oh, how I wish, but I don't know.
Ackerman says she wants to work with the DA's office in the future and that the exhumation may happen sometime next week. Bland says those autopsies will be crucial in proving his case for felony murder. It comes down with the way our medical examiner system works, a part-time ME with a full-time practice, and it seems having that doctor sign off on death certificates without actually seeing a body is a big problem, and the solution will now include hiring a new medical examiner.
The system, the committee agrees, is not broken, but there are some areas that need to be patched.
It is broken. Whether it can be fixed, I don't know.
I think it definitely can be fixed. I think there's a little cracks here and there, but it can definitely be fixed.
Cracks pointed out in today's committee meeting after Tarrant County's chief medical examiner says ME protocol of signing death certificates is wrong and has been for years.
The medical examiner should be viewing every single body, which that presents a problem since the medical examiner is a part-time, very, very part-time position. So we have to look at if we want to keep this, do we want to appoint more deputies, because the way that we've been doing is in fact incorrect.
Tensions ran high days after two bodies dug up for autopsies never performed.
I think you didn't do it right. I'm just saying you didn't ever take the opportunity to call me and talk about it.
Okay, well, I have since then. I have since this
All right.
thing happened.
Okay, I'm going to stop.
The committee says lack of communication between offices and budget constraints are problems.
Have budgetary restrictions impacted when autopsies were performed or not performed, for example?
I think that is something that has become apparent as we've moved through this process, that some of the decisions erred probably a little too much on the side of caution.
Problems Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Ann Ackerman will soon leave behind.
Rules have changed, the needs of the community have changed with the growth and all. And you have to evolve with the process, and that's not where I am in my life and my career right now.
Now the next step is for Judge Redford to draft a rundown of problems and potential solutions to present to county commissioners. We've also just learned that the preliminary autopsy reports from the bodies of that Odessa couple has been submitted to the ME's office. In the studio, Matt Rist.
Following this story from the very beginning, he joins us now to talk about what's next. Matt?
Tatum, it began with the exhumation of the bodies of two Odessa grandparents for autopsies never performed. And it all came down to a tie-breaking vote today by the county judge. So the ME's office will stay, but with lingering questions. An advisory committee recommended that commissioners either keep the medical examiner's office or move to a justice of the peace system. Today, County Commissioner Freddie Gardner moved to close the office. But with just 2 votes in favor and 2 against, it came down to County Judge Redford, who still has faith in the office's future.
Do you have confidence that you can still work out those kinks in the system?
I do, and I think that was the one good thing that came out of this, is the district attorney's office wanted change, and we're going to implement change. We're going to have some different personnel in there, some different management. We'll bring some deputy medical examiners in.
In the last advisory committee meeting, Tarrant County's chief medical examiner exposed flaws with our system. Up until now, our part-time medical examiner was not viewing bodies before signing death certificates.
They're going to get some doctor who's not going to do autopsies, and they're not going to pay him appropriately, and he's not going to supervise probably, and we'll have the same problem again.
There's a lot of unanswered questions, and my hope is that we'll be able to resolve some of these issues and that it will be successful for everybody.
Despite the impending resignation of the chief medical examiner and transfer of the lead investigator, the ME's office says it is working to fix problems.
We have more contact with Dr. Ackerman, and we advise her on every case that we have. She goes and views the body and determines whether or not she wants to order an autopsy.
The advisory committee's main recommendation was to find multiple doctors who could share the responsibilities of viewing bodies. Judge Redford says they still have not found any doctors willing to do it, but she says they have to at least try. Live in studio.